Welcome to Diabetes Primetime, everybody. We are here with exercise physiologist Monet Bland, talking about exercising, goal setting, and living our best lives. So let's get started. Monet, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So you're an exercise physiologist, which is someone who helps people with chronic medical conditions like diabetes exercise safely and work with any complications they may have. You also ran track and played rugby in college, and now you're a professional powerlifter. So I'm completely intimidated, but you probably have a lot of experience with not only setting, but reaching goals. So you're really a wonderful person for us to talk about all this with.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So before we start learning, I want to ask tonight's trivia question. Everyone who answers the question in the comments will receive our giveaway. It's a 7-day exercise plan with a lot of really cool ways to get started moving if you don't currently. It's also just a great way to hold yourself accountable. So our trivia question tonight is in honor of our guest Monet, because she's not only an exercise physiologist, but an athlete too. Our trivia question tonight is, where are the 2020 Summer Olympics being held? Is it A, Rio, B, Tokyo, or C, Denmark? So where are those 2020 Olympics being held this summer? Is it A, Rio, B, Tokyo, or C, Denmark? Leave us your guess in the comments and get that fantastic 7-day exercise guide. All right, Monet, let's just get underway here. Kashyap wants to know, how can we set realistic health and exercise goals, especially for people with diabetes?
I think the first thing that you have to do is, you have to be realistic. That's number one. I would say definitely have a conversation with your doctor, whether that is your endocrinologist, your primary care doctor, because when it comes to exercise and diabetes, you do want to make sure that you are, being safe, that you're not going outside of your means to exercise, and that you're, taking into account any limitations that you might have. So that would be step one. Once you do that, you do want to, I would say, consult with an exercise physiologist to establish those goals. What is realistic for you?
All right. So I have to ask, because I'm pretty good at setting goals. And folks, I would love to hear in the comments what goals you currently have for yourself, not only related to exercise, but just diabetes management in general. Is it going to an education class? Is it trying to get your blood pressure down? Tell us. We really want to hear, and it's a great way to hold yourself accountable. But I'm good at coming up with goals and not so good with following through. So Patricia has just commented. She says, I have goals in mind, but how do I get started and stay consistent? So once we have a goal, where do we go from there?
From there, I feel like you have to set milestones along the way. So you don't want to say, oh, in a year, I'm going to accomplish such and such. You want to start with something a little bit more short term.
Okay.
I feel like us as humans, we need that immediate gratification. And so we want to set those smaller goals first, so that, that'll give us motivation to continue with, whatever plan that we're on. So I would say start with, for some people, it could be for a week, I'm going to check my blood glucose 1 to 2 times a day, and then go from there. And then, you just build up upon that. And once you start to see that, oh, I'm checking 1 to 2 times a day, that in itself is motivation to want to continue. Same thing with exercise, be realistic and say, you know what, this week I want to at least go to the gym once per week, and get consistent with that. And then that in itself will, like I said before, it'll be a motivator to continue to go and to continue to build upon that.
Okay, so full disclosure here. For those of you who watched our Diabetes Primetime episodes back in January, I set a rather modest New Year's resolution of exercising 3 times a week, of going for a walk in our neighborhood, and I have not been consistent with it. What should I do instead, Monet? Should I be trying to set of maybe it's just once a week? How can I get back on track in a way that's not going to make me feel crummy about myself?
I would say think about why you did not achieve that goal. That's step one.
Oh, good question.
Because we all have barriers. For most people, it's lack of time. We're working adults. We have all of these things that we have to accomplish. It could be that you don't know how to exercise. Maybe you need to exercise with a significant other or a friend. So step one is to figure out why you didn't achieve that goal. If it is time, then you say, you know what, maybe 3 times a week is not appropriate right now. And then you say maybe 1 or 2 times a week is. If it's that, you didn't want to go by yourself, find a friend to go with. Maybe you need to get a new pair of running shoes. It could be anything. So it's really individualized, and you have to kind of do a self-reflection and say, what stopped me, and how can I get past that?
So, to take it back to your original point about setting milestones, would I do that? Let's say that I say, okay, I'm just going to start with once a week because I really
Mhm.
don't have a ton of time. Would the milestones be like once I've kind of gotten consistent with once a week, then I start adding additional days a week and really be complimentary of myself as I hit those milestones?
Exactly. So like I said, it really depends on the person. I would say if you're exercising once a week, once you get those first 4 weeks in, think about it. Think about your schedule, think about how you feel, and say, you know what, maybe it's time to increase to 2 times per week. And then try that out for another month and then go from there. There's no set recipe that you have to
Okay.
follow for exercise. It's really about what works for you and what's gonna, get you to keep doing it.
All right. So starting small really does make goals feel more doable. And we are going to play a video right now that really sums up well what you're talking about. And it's about making small changes with diabetes and how we can get some success and then feel good about ourselves and keep changing. So we'll play that video and then come back for some more questions with Monet.
What do I see in people who are successful with managing their diabetes? Most of the time, it's people who really focus on making small changes. They're not really trying to, you know, complete a marathon in 6 months. They're not trying to lose 50 pounds. What they're really trying to do is make some small changes in how they live day to day that improves their health, helps them meet some of their goals, maybe their weight loss goal or becoming more physically active. But they make small changes, things they can live with from day to day, month to month, year to year. When we try to make those really big changes, a lot of times, sometimes we set ourselves up for failure because we get frustrated because we're not meeting such a big goal. So I think it's breaking down what you are trying to accomplish into smaller goals, more obtainable goals that you can reach, so you can find success, which then gives you encouragement to continue to look for that success.
All right, Monet. So let's say that someone makes an exercise goal to be able to walk or jog a 5K. They've set their goal, they've started small, they're making progress, they're doing better than I did, they're feeling great, and then they sprain their ankle. And that's so discouraging. And I know there are people in our Facebook group who that has happened to. What would you say to folks who are in that situation?
I would say you should definitely use this as an opportunity to go see your doctor, because you want to make sure that you never want to self-diagnose. That's
Oh,
that's
good
one
point.
thing I'm not an advocate for.
Mm-hmm.
Go see your doctor, even if you think you know what's going on. It's better to just have that official word from your doctor, and then get advice from them as far as what the recovery process is going to look like. Once you have that established, then you'd want to figure out how can you stay active during this time so that you don't completely lose all of the progress that you've made, because that can cause an individual to become depressed and unmotivated, and then
Sure.
they say, oh, I'm injured, I don't want to do any exercise at all. So at this point, I would actually contact the physiologist, an exercise physiologist, and say, you know what, I've sprained my ankle, my doctor has told me, to not do this type of exercise, what can I do?
I love it. And is there anything that people with diabetes should be particularly aware of with the recovery process?
So, when you start exercising, you will notice that your blood glucose levels do drop, and this can occur up to 48 hours after you exercise. And so, for someone that is exercising consistently, they will notice that their glucose levels have a tendency to be lower.
Mm-hmm.
They may require less medications, whether that be insulin or other injectables or oral medications. And so, if their exercise were to, become limited, they may notice that their glucose levels will start rising again. So that's something that you definitely want to pay attention to.
Got it. I think that's really
Yeah.
smart. My next question for you actually was going to be about, what benefits of exercise are there for people with diabetes? And you just rattled off a bunch of them, but let's talk about, because I think exercise is like the E word. People are like, oh, I don't want to think about exercise. Tell us why we should all be getting more activity, but particularly people with diabetes.
So I like to think of exercise as medicine and not a chore. That's one of the things I like to go with. And so for individuals with diabetes, one of the things that we talk about if you go see your endocrinologist, even primary care doctor, is your A1C. So that's an average blood glucose reading over 3 months. And, everyone has different targets. So I won't comment exactly on what, specific target should be. That would be something that you talk to your endocrinologist about. But typically the goal is to have a lower A1C. And that's one of the things that exercise is going to do. And so you may not see that change in A1C immediately because that's something that you get checked every 3 months, but you will see those changes in your glucose readings immediately. So I always encourage individuals to check pre and post exercise so that they can see the changes in their glucose readings.
Oh, that's such a good point. It's like that instant gratification of like, oh yeah,
Exactly.
wow, this is making a difference. I love it.
Yeah.
Anything else that exercise does for us?
Yeah, so it's going to help with lowering blood glucose levels, which then in turn can, reduce the need for medication or lower, the dosage. For individuals that take insulin, it's going to help to reduce the amount that you may require. It's going to help with your metabolism. In specific resistance training or strength training or weightlifting, they're all used interchangeably. That's going to help with your basal metabolic rate. And so that's going to help you burn more calories throughout the day, which then in turn helps to lower your body weight, which can then in turn help your A1C once again. And we know that individuals with diabetes typically also have, hypertension,
Right.
things of that nature, high cholesterol. So it also, in turn, helps to lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure as well. And a lot of other benefits. Honestly, I could sit here for a very long time.
We could sit here the
and,
whole episode.
yeah,
Mental health, emotional health, stress
exactly,
management. It's just good
exactly.
for us.
Yes. It's medicine with no crazy side effects.
That's a great way to think about it. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I want to remind everyone tonight that if you answer our trivia question, you will get our 7-day exercise guide for free. And our trivia question tonight is sponsored by ArcRay. As your diabetes health ally, ArcRay helps make diabetes management easy and affordable. Visit the link that we're putting in the comments to receive a free blood glucose monitor, along with some pretty cool wellness materials to help simplify your diabetes management. In case you missed tonight's trivia question earlier, here it is again. Where are the 2020 Summer Olympics being held? Is it A, Rio, B, Tokyo, or C, Denmark? This is our question in honor of Monet because she's an athlete, and I personally am very excited about the 2020 Olympics. Leave us your guess in the comments and also tell us what your favorite Olympic sport is. What are you looking most forward to watching? For me, it's gymnastics. Monet, do you have a preference?
I absolutely love gymnastics, but I will say that I'm looking forward to track and field as a former sprinter.
I love track and field too. Yeah, I will watch pretty much anything on the Olympics. I love the personal interest stories. They get me every time. So we have a great question from Natalie that has to do with setbacks, but not an injury. She wants to know if you have a cold, can you still exercise, or is that a time we should take a break?
That is hard to say. It depends on the person. So if you have a cold and, with being sick, typically blood glucose levels will also rise. If your glucose levels are elevated, let's say you have ketones, please do not exercise. So typically we say if glucose levels are above 250 and you have ketones, do not exercise because that typically is going to cause glucose to continue to rise. So in that case, I would not exercise. If you do not have ketones, your blood glucose levels are within normal range, and you're feeling okay, but not 100%, I would exercise with caution. So I would reduce the intensity, maybe reduce the time, and just kind of see how you feel as you go along.
I think that's a great suggestion. And folks, as always, with all of our shows, we provide information. You definitely want to talk to your physician and go see a diabetes educator about getting a sick day plan that's specific for you and also getting an exercise plan that's right for you. Monet, you've referred to seeing an exercise physiologist a couple of times so far in this episode. If someone says, Monet, I love what you're saying, and I'd love to see someone who could customize an exercise plan for me, where should they go? Where should they find that right person?
So it really depends on your location. So, if you're in Boston, there's a lot of options. There's a diabetes center here. There's Joslin Diabetes Center, which has exercise physiologists. Outside of that, sometimes it can be tough to find an exercise physiologist. I would say your best bet is to find a certified personal trainer. You do want to make sure that you do look at their certifications, look at their background, and see if that person is right for you. There are trainers that do specialize with older populations that have certain orthopedic limitations. So just finding that right fit.
That's a great point. So definitely be asking them about their qualifications, asking them about,
Exactly.
what type of patient they or person they specialize in seeing. A lot of times our doctor's offices, if we see a doctor's office affiliated with the hospital, they might have some recommendations as well of people that they refer over. All right, Monet, have you ever been perfectly healthy, not sick, not injured, but you still didn't feel like doing your workout? Joanne says this has happened to her, and she wants to know how you stay motivated kind of when the initial excitement of starting an exercise plan wears off.
Yes, I can speak for myself as a working adult. It happens to me quite often. You have to you have to keep that little motivator in the back of your head. And for all of us, that's different. For me, I'm on the USA team and I really want to perform well
Wow.
at my next competition. For others, it might be, they're concerned with how they look. For others, they could be training for a marathon, for some type of event. And so just keeping that in the back of your head is your why. Why do you continue to do this? For individuals with diabetes, one of the huge motivators is keeping your A1C within target. And so even on the days that you don't want to go, that's something to keep in mind is, you know what? I'm doing this for my health. And if that's not enough, I don't know what is. And your health should always, that should always be number one. And so I think that in itself should be a huge motivator.
I think sometimes when we frame it in terms of the people that we love in our lives,
Yeah.
maybe, getting out and walking isn't great for me, but I want to be able to play with my grandkids. I want to be able to be active. And those things can kind of help keep me motivated when, having a lower resting heart rate maybe doesn't do it for me in the moment. So Monet, I do have one question for you. And we've heard this question a lot, which is when is the best time of day to exercise? There may not be a specific answer to that, but I know that's a question that people commonly have.
That is, one of the top questions that I get all the time. And I hate to break it to you, but there is no best time of day to exercise. It really, you're going to hear me say this a lot. It really depends on the person. There are individuals that they exercise at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm not going to exercise at 5 a.m.
Me neither.
There are people that like to do it during lunchtime because, they have an hour for lunch and that's the only time they have because when they get home, they've got to take care of kids and things like that. And then there are others that exercise after work. So it really, really depends on the person. Now, I will give recommendations for individuals that notice that their blood glucose levels are lower or higher at certain time points during the day. So I would never recommend exercising at a point in the day when you know that your glucose levels are lower, because that would put you at risk for hypoglycemia because most
good point.
exercise has a tendency to reduce your blood glucose. So that is one thing I would say. There's only one time I would say that you shouldn't exercise, and that's probably close to bedtime.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't want your glucose levels to drop while you're sleeping, or nocturnal hypoglycemia, as they call it.
Got it. So
Because your
being
body
aware.
doesn't respond the same way.
Exactly. So being aware of hypoglycemia as, thinking about when we want to exercise is one
Exactly.
consideration. But it sounds like pretty much any time that you'll do it is the best time.
Exactly. It depends on what fits in your schedule. And, for some people, they have to split it up, which is totally fine too, where you do some of your exercise in the morning, some at night, maybe some midday, some at night. There's no set plan. It's really about whatever works for you.
So an educator told me one time that 3 10-minute sessions of exercise was just as good for you as 30 minutes at one time. First of all, is that true? But second of all, if it is, how cool is that?
Yeah, so it is true. So we like to say that we can break up exercise into these bouts of exercise, and that's what we refer to as that 10 minutes. Now, I will say that is not an excuse to split up your exercise long term. That's something that you want to do in the initial stages.
Okay.
You're just getting started, and maybe you've been sedentary, and achieving that 30 minutes at once isn't realistic, or it's not tolerable. And so in that case, splitting it up is fine. But you do want to try and push yourself a little bit. So if your schedule permits, try and accomplish that 30 minutes. Or, maybe you do two 15-minute bouts and then you start to progress and go to achieve that full 30 minutes.
All right, a very good, important caveat. I'm glad I asked you about that. So our Amazon's Choice question tonight comes from Miyoshi. She has a back injury and wants to know if it's still possible to exercise. And before you answer that, Monet, a big thank you to our sponsor, Amazon's Choice brand of blood glucose monitors and blood pressure monitoring products. They make healthcare more affordable. So what would you say about exercising with a back injury?
With a back injury, I'd want to know exactly what the injury is. The first step is to definitely go see your doctor. Chances are they're going to recommend physical therapy. Um, so I've experienced this, with a variety of patients. I would encourage that individual to first start with physical therapy, and make sure that they're doing exactly what they need to do as far as rehabilitation. If once they get to a point where they feel like they can do the physical therapy and exercise, then I'd create an exercise plan for them. And the reason I say that is usually physical therapy is at least 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
So having that in addition to the exercise might be a little too taxing. Just depends on the person, but we'd go from there, and then I'd encourage exercise that is going to be safe for, a back injury. So that might be, instead of walking on the treadmill, it could be, doing non-weight bearing exercises like using a recumbent bike, something along those lines.
So Monet, have you ever had an injury kind of in your career as an athlete that kind of forced you to slow down and learn something from it? Give someone who's dealing with an injury a silver lining. Has it ever been a good thing in your life?
It can actually be a good thing. Sometimes rest is important, and sometimes it takes an injury to show you that, maybe you need to change things up a little bit. It could be that your recovery, wasn't as good as it should be, or, your form or something along those lines. And so I recently have been dealing with a knee injury,
Mm.
and that actually forced me to go see a physical therapist. And in doing that, I realized that there were a couple things that I was actually doing wrong. And so I've been incorporating those new exercises into my normal routine, and my knee has gotten a lot better. But during that time, I was smart, and I did take some time away from squatting because you don't want the injury to get worse, and then you get to a point where you are not mobile and you're completely sedentary. So just
Got
about
it.
being smart.
I love it. I think that's really smart. So when you accomplish a goal, do you celebrate?
I do celebrate.
Yeah.
Yes, I think everyone should celebrate when they achieve a goal.
And how do you celebrate? Because Jane is saying, I want to know what's a good way to celebrate reaching a goal or milestone without eating.
Yes. If you guys don't remember anything else, do not reward yourself with food. That's a slippery slope to go down, because then you will keep doing things so that you can have this food, which can then lead to weight gain, changes in blood glucose levels, higher A1C. We'll just go down a rabbit hole with that. But you can reward yourself with other things. So, it could be, if you're a runner, you get new footwear. If you go to the gym, it's maybe a new outfit. If for me, I love Lululemon, but they're expensive. So I will say that, if I hit certain targets and certain goals, that, that's my reward. So, something along those lines. It could even be where you treat yourself to a massage, which is something that's going to be beneficial for you as
Sure.
well. So,
I love it. All right, so
yeah.
the celebrating is over. What's the next step? Does someone set a goal to kind of maintain their achievements? Do they try to set a new goal altogether? What's kind of that next step? How do you keep pushing yourself forward?
So Both of those answers are correct. So you could either maintain or you might be looking to kind of take it to the next step. That is all dependent on your current health status. So there are some people where we kind of want them to, just maintain, just, given their history and everything. Whereas others, we want them to continue to push. In either case, definitely, search for either an exercise physiologist or trainer, and then, have that conversation with your doctor to figure out what is appropriate for you for those next steps. But you definitely always want to think about what is the next step so that you don't get bored, because that's actually another big barrier to exercise is people get bored of doing the same exact thing. So you do want to switch it up, even if you're limited to a certain exercise level or your exercise tolerance. You can switch up your modality of exercise as well.
So, Monet, you mentioned resistance training or weightlifting earlier. Talk us through kind of the different aspects of exercise that a person with diabetes should be doing. I think sometimes we get into a rut where we only do cardiovascular or we only do stretching. Talk about kind of the range of activity that someone should be considering and kind of trying to work into their week.
So there are 3 exercises to remember. There's aerobic exercise, which is commonly known as cardio. So that could be running, walking, swimming, biking, anything along those lines. And then we have strength training or resistance training. They're typically used interchangeably. For that, we have body weight exercises, barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, resistance bands, machines.
Whole
And then we
range.
have, exactly. And then we have stretching, which could be static stretching, dynamic stretching, yoga. And then there's Pilates, which is a little bit of resistance training and stretching, I would say. I think everyone should be doing all 3. I think it's about 50-50. So 50% aerobic exercise, and then that other 50% should include strength training and stretching exercises.
Okay. I think that's very inspiring. I think sometimes we either get into a weightlifting rut or we only, do cardio or, we only go to yoga. And I think it's important to kind of remember that, we want to do things from the spectrum. And again, seeing a professional can help you develop something in each of those areas to make sure that you're staying well balanced. Monet, thank you so much for talking to us tonight. I'm so inspired to look at my goals, start getting more activity into my day. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that people with diabetes know about activity and goals?
Remember that exercise is medicine, and it starts at home. There are exercises that you can do without even leaving your home. I know a lot of people can be intimidated by the gym environment.
Yes.
And so, you can make anywhere your gym, outside, inside, or a gym, stairs, anything. It's just about getting started and getting motivated. So exercise is medicine.
I love it. So inspiring. Folks, before we go, the answer to tonight's trivia question, which city will host the 2020 Olympics, is B, Tokyo. We will all be getting to visit Japan vicariously next summer when we watch the Summer Olympics. So again, Monet, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks everyone for watching. Good luck with your exercise goals. We will see you next time. Good night.